Well, it was a little strange not having a Barrie Colts game to cover on Saturday night at the Saddlein Arena, so I was able to go out of town, see some family, and shout out to the Hespeler Shamrocks. My nephew, he's the stats collector there for the hockey team. It was a lot of fun. I haven't been to a PGHL game in quite a while. Rogers here in Simcoe County, who used to cover the PGHL quite regularly, the Stainer Siskins, Alliston Hornets, Aurelia Terriers, but since they've switched over to PGHL TV, we don't cover the games anymore. So it was kind of refreshing to go to a Junior C hockey game, a different pace than what we're used to at the OHL level. But, I just want to, suggest if you're looking for other hockey options, Junior C is, it's a good watch. And of course, there's teams all across Ontario. So there might be a small team not far from where you are if you do live in Ontario. But let's get right down to it because it's Monday. I love doing the Power Rankings videos. It gives us a snapshot of where teams are in any given week. And we start off with number 20. It's the Peterborough Petes. No change for them. They've been sitting 20th for quite some time now. They were 0-1-1 last week. They did force the Oshawa Generals to overtime Thursday night, so they earned at least 1 point. But man, they're now on a 9-game losing streak to start the regular season. But they did solve their overage situation as Liam Stushka no longer with the Petes. He is signed with the Shawinigan Cataracts in the QMJHL, so they're now down to 3 OAs. But still, this team needing to dig deep to try and get that first win of the regular season. The big problem is scoring. They only have 15 goals for, which is the lowest in the OHL. The second lowest in goals for, the Guelph Storm, and they have 24. So there's a 9-goal gap between the 20th ranked team and the 19th. So coming up for the Petes as they try to snap this losing streak, they host the Kingston Frontenacs on Thursday before traveling to Brantford on Saturday, and then they visit the Oshawa Generals on Sunday. At number 19, the Guelph Storm, same spot as last week. They're another team that continues to struggle. They went 0-2-1 last week. They earned a point in a shootout loss at home against the Kitchener Rangers. Like Peterborough, goal scoring, it's an issue. Like I said, 24 goals for. They've also given up 31 goals against. So this is a team that's still trying to find its consistency, its direction. Of course, Jet Luchenko still with the Philadelphia Flyers. That's going to be a storyline, I'm sure, for the coming weeks. But for Guelph, trying to turn things around quickly here. And it's not going to be easy this weekend because Friday they're at home to the Flint Firebirds. Saturday they're in Barrie to take on the Colts. And then Sunday they take on the Brampton Steelhead. So another tough week ahead for the Guelph Storm. At number 18, the Kingston Frontenacs. No change from last week. Kingston, they played 3 games on the road last week, and all 3 games ended with an overtime loss. So you have to give some credit to the Fronts forcing overtime against Erie, Brantford, and Niagara, but it's losing those extra points that could become costly when we're at the end of the regular season. So we'll see what happens here for Kingston. I do feel like they're a better team than what the record suggests. But shout out to Thomas Urinen. He had a goal and 3 assists over the last 2 games of this road trip. He looked really good, especially in the game against the Niagara Ice Dogs. So like I said, they do have some good pieces. They just need to click and get some wins here. Coming up for Kingston, they're on the road Thursday night. They're going to visit the Peterborough Petes. Friday, they're home to the Oshawa Generals. And then Sunday, travel to North Bay to battle the Battalion. Number 17, the Owen Sound attack. They are down 2 positions this week. Owen Sound were 0-1-1 last week, but Carter George showed in the shootout loss against the Barrie Colts why he is one of the top goaltenders in the OHL. He was named first star in the loss to the Barrie Colts after making 45 saves to keep Owen Sound in the hockey game. So Owen Sound, they might not be one of the strongest teams offensively, but if they can continue to get the goaltending and the no-quit attitude that they have up front, they should be a team that makes the playoffs in the Western Conference. Coming up, it's a very tough road trip to the West Division for Owen Sound. It starts Thursday night in Windsor, Saturday they're in Flint, and then Sunday in Saginaw. Number 16, the Niagara Ice Dogs. No change from last week. Now, I feel like the Ice Dogs could be higher in my power rankings. I'm sure if you're an Ice Dogs fan, you'd probably say, yes, they should be much higher than 16th. But they went 2-1 last week, and in their 2 wins, they needed overtime against Ottawa and Kingston. So I paid close attention to the game they played Friday in Kitchener, and if they would have earned a win against the Rangers, they probably would have had a huge leap in the power rankings. But right now, I'm a little hesitant to have them climb higher so quickly. Even though they're first in the Eastern Conference standings, and I think this could be a bit of a recency bias after what we've seen these last couple of years, but I want to see a little bit more from this Ice Dogs team before they can take a huge leap in the power rankings. I am impressed. They are 7-2 to start the regular season, but some of those wins are against teams that at this point you should win, and you're also needing overtime to get those victories. So once we start seeing them get some wins against some tougher opponents, like that game against Kitchener, it was a really good game. Ended up being a 4-2 final for the Rangers, but I'd like to see them maybe get a string of wins against some of the top teams in the league, and they could do that this weekend because it's a tough week ahead. Thursday, they host the Oshawa Generals, who've been much better. Friday, they're in Sarnia, the Sting. They haven't suffered a regulation loss in 5 games. And then Saturday, they're in Windsor. And of course, the Spitfires right now tops in the OHL standings. So if they can get a string of wins here, there's no doubt Niagara will climb up this power rankings very fast. At number 15, the Soo Greyhounds, they fell 1 position. Now, you cannot take the Soo lightly, even though they're in the bottom half of the Western Conference standings. They went 2-1 last week, including a 5-4 win in a shootout against Sarnia, who looked really strong in their road trip leading up to the game on Sunday. And I talked about Carson Andrew last week for the Soo Greyhounds, and he had another real good game against the Sting, posting a goal and an assist, and was named first star in that game. So there are some positive signs with the Soo Greyhounds team, and we're starting to see improved goaltending from Miller and Schenkel. So don't count out the Soo Greyhounds at this point. Coming up this week, just 2 games at home. Wednesday, they host the Saginaw Spirit, and then Friday, they're home to the Ottawa 67s. At number 14, the Sarnia Sting. They are up 3 spots this week. If you're a fan of the Sting, you have to be happy with the play Sarnia had through their Northern Ontario road swing, where they went 2-0-1, and they've now gone 5 games without a regulation loss. So some real good hockey right now for the Sarnia Sting. And I really haven't mentioned Alessandro Diorio that much to start the season, but he has quietly been putting points up. The 2nd overall pick from the 2024 OHL priority selection. 2 goals, 5 assists, good for 7 points on a 5-game point streak. And this Sarnia team, yeah, they might be one of the younger teams in the league, but they have been fun to watch. So keep an eye on the Sarnia Sting going forward. On Wednesday, they're home to the Flint Firebirds. Friday, they host Niagara. And then Sunday, they host the London Knights. So could this team continue to find a way up the power rankings? If they get a good record against those 3 teams, it's very possible. At number 13, we have the Flint Firebirds. They fell 3 positions this week. The struggles continued for Flint last week, going 0-2, losses to Erie and Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm kind of surprised how they've been playing recently. I know they can turn it around. We're not even at the quarter mark of the regular season, but I kind of thought Flint would be one of those teams off to a quick start this season, because I've kind of viewed them as maybe a threat in the West Division, but right now just not seeing that yet. This week, they're on the road Wednesday in Sarnia. Friday, they travel to Guelph, and then Saturday, they're at home to the Owen Sound Attack. At number 12, the Barrie Colts. They're up 1 spot this week. The Colts, they're finding their groove. They are now riding a 3-game winning streak. They did need a shootout in their win against the Owen Sound Attack. Really, that game, Carter George stole the show and really kept the attack in that game. But it also sounds like Bo Jelsma could be returning to the lineup maybe as early as this weekend for the Barrie Colts, which would be a huge boost having their captain back. And that's just in time for their first 3-3 of the season, because they're going up against the Erie Otters at home Thursday night. Friday, they travel to Brampton. And then Saturday, they take on the Guelph Storm. So we'll see if the winning streak will be extended going into this weekend. At number 11, it's the Brampton Battalion. They're also up 1 position this week. The Steelheads, they managed to snap their 3-game losing streak with a win in a shootout against Ottawa. And then they lost 3-2 in overtime to Saginaw. And it seems like the offense has kind of cooled off a little bit in Brampton. Although Porter Martone, he continues to get the job done. 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points last week. So Martone, he sits 3rd in the league in points with 20, and he's tied for 2nd in goals with 10. So Martone continues to be quite the threat offensively for the Brampton Steelheads. Coming up this week, Friday they host the Barrie Colts, and then Sunday travel to Guelph to face the Storm. At number 10, the North Bay Battalion, down 3 spots this week. Battalion 1-1-1 was a record last week, so 3 out of a possible 6 points. But it was a pretty big overtime win on the road against the Brantford Bulldogs, where Andrew LeBlanc was the hero. For LeBlanc, he's points have been kind of hard to come by for him, the overage forward. LeBlanc, after being traded to North Bay from Sarnia, was almost a point per game for the North Bay Battalion. But this year, he's so far 6 points in 11 games. I think he could probably pick it up. Now that they've solved their OA situation in North Bay, I would think the LeBlanc twins will really start to pick it up here for North Bay, but time will tell. Coming up for the battalion, they're home to Ottawa on Thursday. Friday, they travel to Sudbury, and then on Sunday, they're home to the Kingston Frontenacs. At number 9, we have the Brantford Bulldogs, who are up 2 positions this week. The Bulldogs, they've climbed their way to the top spot in the East Division, although they have 11 points on the season, and that puts them behind 4 teams in the Central Division. That just goes to show how strong of a start the Central Division has had this year. And it has been a good run of late for Brantford. They've earned points in 5 consecutive games. Nick Lardis now tied for second in goals in the OHL with 10, while Patrick Thomas second with 12 assists. So not too bad there offensively from Brantford. On Friday, they travel to London to face the Knights, and then on Saturday, they host the Peterborough Petes. At number 8, the Erie Otters, they climbed up 1 spot this week. The Otters 2-1, including an overtime win to open the week against the Kingston Frontenacs, where Martin Mishiak was the hero. And really, since coming back from the Chicago Blackhawks, Mishiak has had 7 points in 7 games, and he's been a key piece for the Otters. And if they're going to contend in the Midwest Division, Mishiak will be a key part of that offense. Of course, still waiting for Matthew Schaefer to come back after dealing with mono. But this Otters team, I still feel they could be a top team once we reach the end of the regular season in the Western Conference. Now, coming up this week for Erie, it's a very tough week. They're on the road Thursday to face the Barrie Colts. Friday night, they're in Kitchener to face the Rangers. And then Saturday, they're home to the Kitchener Rangers. So a very tough 3-3 coming up here for Erie. At number 7, the Sudbury Wolves. They dropped 2 spots this week. They had a record of 2-1 last week, which included an emotional win in overtime against the North Bay Battalion. Kieran Walton, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points in that game. I've been really impressed with Walton's play this season. He now has 15 points in 10 games. So things looking up for the Sudbury Wolves. They do have a bit of a quieter week ahead, both on home ice. Friday, they're hosting the North Bay Battalion, and then Sunday, they host the Ottawa 67s. At number 6, the Oshawa Generals, they climbed 2 positions this week. Are we looking at the return of the Oshawa Generals here? Because they went 3-0 last week. They needed overtime in that first win on the road against the struggling Peterborough Petes, but then won the next 2 games by a combined score of 9-5 against Peterborough and Saginaw. So this team, they've got the deep offense. We saw Beckett Seneca start to pick it up, but more importantly, Colby Barlow earned his first goal as a member of the Oshawa Generals in the win on Sunday against the Saginaw Spirit. So we'll have to wait and see if the Oshawa Generals have arrived after their slow start. It's going to be a busy week for them. Thursday night, they're in Niagara. Friday, they travel to Kingston, and then they're home to the Peterborough Petes on Sunday. At number 5, the Ottawa 67s. They fell 1 position this week. The only reason the 67s didn't have a drastic drop in the power rankings is because 2 of their 3 losses came in overtime or a shootout. That was against Niagara and Brampton. So I view shootouts as a tie when I do the power rankings, because I adjust the power rankings on a nightly basis, depending on the results from that evening. And since it was a shootout loss, that's viewed as a tie. But then with an overtime loss, unless it's against a team much lower than them in the standings, I don't usually impact a team negatively that much. So that's why Ottawa's still in the top 5 for now. Although this team, I think, could end up tumbling if they don't turn things around here. Ottawa, though, they do have some good pieces. I do like Colin McKenzie Annette, one of the better goaltenders in the OHL. You have Luca Pinelli, who's a very gifted offensive forward. While Matthew Mayich, great on the back end for the 67. So this team, if they don't turn things around, they will be, I don't even know how far they could tumble. But this is a 67s team that has shown they had a great start, but have really slowed down here over these last couple of weeks. Now, they do have 3 road games this week, all in Northern Ontario, so that's not going to be an easy road trip. It starts Thursday night in North Bay. Friday, they're in Sault Ste. Marie, and then they wrap it up Sunday in Sudbury. At number 4, it's the London Knights, who are up 2 positions this week. It's going to be hard to keep London out of the top 3 here, as they have very strong play. They've got everybody back. Easton Cowan's firing on all cylinders. Although the 5-1 loss to the Saginaw Spirit Friday night was a little surprising, as the Spirit seemed to control most of that game, and we started to see the frustrations carrying over for the London Knights as penalties have been growing. As the penalty minutes right now, they're the second highest team in the Western Conference when it comes to penalty minutes with 159. The only team with more are the Windsor Spitfires, who have 169 in the Western Conference. So we'll see what happens from here. We know the London Knights are a deep team. They don't usually lose by 4 goals like we saw the other night. So we'll keep an eye on London. Well, they do have 2 games this week, or 3 games this week, rather. And they're all tough opponents. On Friday, they're home to Brantford. Saturday, a rematch with the Saginaw Spirit at the Dow Event Center. And then Sunday, they're taking on the Sarnia Sting in Sarnia. At number 3, the Saginaw Spirit, they dropped 1 position this week. It was a tough 3-3 the Spirit had over the weekend, where they posted wins against London and Brampton, and then fell short in Oshawa. You almost have to wonder if maybe the fatigue was starting to become a factor in that game against the Generals, but still a very good Saginaw team that can find the back of the net at will. Michael Misa now sitting at 14 goals to lead the OHL, while Christian Epperson, he's been pretty dominant of late as well. 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points in just 9 games. Last week alone, Epperson had 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. So just another weapon to keep an eye on with the Saginaw Spirit hockey team. For the Spirit, coming up Wednesday night, they're in Sault Ste. Marie. Saturday, they host London. And then on Sunday, they're up against the Owen Sound Attack. At number 2, the Windsor Spitfires, they are up 1 position. And I really did not think we would see the Spitfires in first place overall when we're coming up towards the end of October. But here we are. They were 2-0 again last week, although they were wins against Guelph and Owen Sound. So games they should win if they're going to be a contender. But think about it this way. If they would have lost 1 or 2 of those games, we would be having some much different conversations about this Windsor Spitfires team. So really, they've put themselves in quite the spot. A lot of people considering Windsor to be a threat in the Western Conference. And when you look at the likes of Liam Greentree, he's now first in the OHL in points with 23. Well, Ilya Protas, he has looked pretty good since coming back from the Washington Capitals. He has 8 goals, which puts him 5th in the league in goal scoring. So not too shabby here for the Spitfires, who play 2 at home this week. They're home to the Owen Sound Attack Thursday, and then Saturday they host the Niagara Ice Dogs. So at number 1 for the second week in a row, it's the Kitchener Rangers. And the Rangers, they've looked good, believe it or not. I was following the Kitchener game against Niagara closely, and since the Ice Dogs, they're currently leading the Eastern Conference standings, and with Kitchener at the top of my power rankings, I was wondering, okay, how's this going to go? But Kitchener getting that 4-2 win on home ice, reassuring why they're at the top of the power rankings. Although they needed a shootout to defeat the Guelph Storm Saturday on the road. But the Rangers, they now have points in their last 9 games. So not too bad for a team considering they traded away their leading goal scorer last season, Carson Rakoff, and they gave up 12 goals in just their second game of the regular season. This team has really turned it around. And I don't know how long Kitchener will be able to continue this strong play, but you have to give full credit to Jussi Ahokas, the head coach of the Kitchener Rangers, because this has been fun to follow, and we'll see how long they can keep going. The acquisitions of Chris Grizolia and Jakub Kromiak, small trades, but they're paying off already. So we'll see if this keeps going, but the Kitchener Rangers, they do play a home-and-home against the Erie Otters starting on Friday, and that's going to be at the Odd. And then on Saturday, they're at the Erie Insurance Arena. So those are the power rankings for this week. Let me know in the comments section down below your thoughts on the rankings. Do you think a different team should be number 1 overall? Or what's been your pleasant surprise so far this season? Love the interaction. Thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I know we've had quite a few new subscribers, and I appreciate you for propping up this channel as we continue to grow to talk about junior hockey here with the OHL. So again, we'll talk to you later, and stay classy.